For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Tracy Hancock. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me in studio to discuss the principle of non-violence. Hi, Raymond.
Thank you.
You preface what you write in your column by remarking that people are only focusing on some aspects of Zuma's rule when they're asking him to step down. Could you please discuss this further?
Yes, I think it's very important if we call on Zuma to resign and we expect something better to ensue afterwards, that we understand what it is that is wrong with Zuma, because we don't want Zuma Mark II to come in Zuma's place. And the problem I have with most of the commentary is that the only thing that they see wrong in the Zuma era is Nkandla and corruption more generally. Sometimes there's mention of patronage. And what I tried to do in this article was to argue that violence is at the center, it's always been at the center of the Zuma era. From the time of his rape trial, when he used to come out of court every day and sing a song, Mshini Wam, which means bring me my machine gun. It is both a phallic symbol and it's militaristic. And he sent a signal that his rule represented a particular form of real masculinity, militaristic, tough masculinity. Unlike someone like Thabo Mbeki, he was one of these bookish types. And I think that we find this again in the shoot to kill doctrine, find this in the Marikana killings, you find this in the intolerance of freedom of political organization, as in the suppression of COPE. We need to remember that COPE was a breakaway after Thabo Mbeki was defeated, and when they fought the 2009 elections, their meetings used to be broken up by ANC supporters. And you had people like Malema and Vavi saying, we are prepared to kill for Zuma. And it's, in a sense, a parody of what Mandela said in his Rivonia trial, that if needs be, I'm prepared to die. What they said, if needs be, it's so important to have Zuma there that I am prepared to kill. And that was part of the doctrine, and it finds this readiness to resort to force and to remove the idea of a civilianized police service finds a fertile soil in South Africa. South Africa is a very macho society. If you go to a pub, I don't go to pubs much anymore, but I pass through a sort of a pub at the Troyville Hotel, giving you a bit of advertisement, Troyville Hotel. I pass through a pub there. But now when you're in a pub, you see these people milling around there. Sometimes if you're looking at someone, they'll say to you, why are you looking at me? And then before you know what's happened, you've got a club. Now that is how I grew up in South Africa, experiencing masculinity, the admiration of a rough, tough manhood. And the principle of non-violence has never been adequately instilled in South Africa. It is true that the ANC pursued non-violent policies until 1961, and they only resorted to arms when it was impossible to pursue peaceful struggle. But that principle of peace, the value of peace, has not been adequately instilled in post-apartheid South Africa. We have a situation where a lot of people were not happy at the time of negotiations because they thought maybe they could beat the government in warfare. But also you have, across the board, all population groups a lot of people who are willing to fight, instead of resolving disputes between one another through negotiations and argument, they would rather use force. And I think we have to ask ourselves what we can do to instill in one another, instill in our children, ideas that gentleness, reasoning is a desirable way of dealing with differences of opinion and not fighting. And I believe we need to go back and learn the lessons of the principle of non-violence and why peace is necessary. Why the ANC settled on negotiations was that it was not primarily whites who were dying. It was ordinary people in the townships, innocent people who were being killed, and they needed to end the violence, to have peace and democracy. And if you don't have peace, you can't really have democracy.
And could you elaborate on what you mean when you refer to violence as being antagonistic to the freedom of the person who is under attack?
Well, you know, if you're a human being, to be a human being means Homo sapiens, means thinking animal. And as a human being, you have the capacity to decide what you want to do, and unless it breaks the law, you really are free to do it. Now, when someone exercises violence on you, what that person does is he rubs out your humanity, your ability to choose what you want to do, because you are just coerced into something else or struck to the ground. So your humanity is transformed into nothingness. You're treated like a thing. This word reify means to treat you like a thing. Now in prison, they used to refer to the prisoners as eenhede, units. In other words, they didn't regard the prisoners as human beings. They were just numbers. And they would say, het jy die eenhede gebring? Did you bring the units? They were, and a situation of imprisonment is a poor example of someone's humanity being curtailed. Violence extinguishes it. If there's a war, for example, you have to attack the enemy. The enemy consists of a range of human beings. Their human characteristics is erased because you have to move from one point to another and remove whatever stands in your way. Now, sometimes you have to attack a fort, but the way you attack a fort and the way you attack a human being are not very different. The humanity of the human being is undermined through acts of violence. And I believe that the founding parents of our Constitution wanted to embrace a humanistic ethos. And we need to recover that and celebrate non-violence and peace. Thank you.
Thanks, Raymond. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the principle of non-violence.